All right. I'm Alan Thomas, and welcome to Rethink Dieting. Today, I have got a really special guest, Donnie Lewis. And Donnie and I have known each other for over a decade now, and I wanted to bring him on, not because Donnie struggles with weight, obviously, Donnie doesn't, but because Donnie knows something about overcoming obstacles. And before I get to Donnie, I always just tell people what this is about and where I came from. You know, my story, Donnie knew me when I was twice the man I am now, so almost. So I hit 304 pounds in 2017, and it just changed everything. It was a day that when I looked at that scale and knew that I was 55 and the odds of me living another 10 years was almost zero if I didn't change something. I knew my wife would call me her first husband because I'd be dead, and my kids would call somebody else dad because somebody would come sweep that beautiful lady off her feet. And Donnie knows I'm married up, but it changed. And while I had failed literally probably close to 100 times on different diets, I had to rethink the whole process and what it was really about. And this is one of the reasons I wanted Donnie on here with me, is because I realized it was about obstacles. It was an obstacle. It was an obstacle, and we all face them in life. And dieting, you know, is such an overused word, and we're always looking for that magic pill. And I think we all want that magic pill in every aspect of life, but unfortunately, they don't exist to my knowledge. But welcome, Donnie. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Alan. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and for those that don't know you, Donnie's gonna do most of the talking. I'm gonna do a lot of listening because Donnie is in Nashville, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville, right there in the area. He has been in the music business for a couple of decades, almost 30 years. Did I do that right?
Yes, over that.
And over 30 years, even though he doesn't look 30, he's over 30 years, and he is he's been tour manager with household names like Trisha Yearwood, Peter Frampton, and a whole bunch of other folks. But Donnie has got a great story, and I really wanted to have him on here, as I said, to talk about his story and where he came from and how he rose to such a level of literally. I did this backdrop for everybody because this is the view Donnie sees. Without the Rethink Dieting, you should put that up in all your concerts. but without Donnie, the tour doesn't happen, and he's the go-to guy. I've seen him in action, and it's just such a pleasure to watch him. But he didn't get there overnight, and he overcame several things. So, Donnie, welcome, and talk a little bit about really your story and what you had to overcome to reach the level of success you've had.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on again, Alan. And I really think that there's a huge need for what you are doing and the path that you followed of just realizing, wow, what I've accomplished here, I know that I can teach others and work with others to accomplish the same thing. So kudos to you and all the people that you're helping. It's just, it's very much needed. But for me, I have struggled with some weight issues along the way. And I've bounced all over the place. In junior high and elementary, I was so skinny you couldn't hardly see me. And then we go through phases, I guess. I know I did. And I think my obstacles were more related to coming from a very poor background. My family comes from the Appalachian area of Kentucky and migrated just like thousands and thousands of people did to southern and middle Ohio. And, growing up, Alan, we were supposed to either work in the paper factories, we were supposed to work in the coal mines or the timber yards. And I decided that I was going to be either a veterinarian or in the music industry. I was determined that I was going to do one of those two things. Going in the veterinarian field, we just didn't have a lot of money. I mean, honestly, I was so embarrassed growing up about not having indoor plumbing and not having a telephone until I was in high school. it was really crazy that my grandparents from the hills of Kentucky had telephone indoor plumbing before we did in Ohio, in a less of a rural area. So yeah, it was tough, but I was told by my father early on that when you turn 18, I've got you a job all set up at the mill. Come on down, we'll get you set up. And I didn't say it at the time, Alan, but I was thinking, look, I hear you come home every day at 3:30, sit down to the dinner table, watch TV for a couple hours, go to bed, and you gripe about it the whole time. I mean, gripe from the minute he walks in the door to the time he goes to bed and starts the whole routine over again. And I was told that music is something you did on the weekends in church, or if you're in the secular world, you play drums maybe in a club once or twice a week, and that's it. But I knew that I wanted to play drums for a living. I had an outside shot to go try out for a band in Arkansas. Got the job, didn't expect it, called back home, told my family they thought I'd lost my mind. Honestly, they thought, what are you doing? And my dad said, it's okay, you'll be back in a few weeks, just count on it. And Al and I remember listening and hearing those words in my sleep. And I went to a McDonald's one time to get a cheeseburger, small fries, and a small Coke, because we, even with the band, we were trying to get a record deal and break in and all of that. And so we had to be very careful about what we were spending. And my dad's words were ringing in my ear when I went up to a counter at McDonald's and they told me what the cost was. And I had to change my order from a cheeseburger to a hamburger or go try to find a few pennies in the car. That was embarrassing. But I heard my father's words ringing in my ear, and I was bound and determined that I was not turning back, could not turn back. And so we had a great 8-year run, and the band went on after I even left. We had a couple #1 hits, nominated for a Grammy, and won several awards.
Tell the name of the band.
Mid-South Boys. And then when we got to Nashville, it changed from Mid-South Boys to Mid-South. But we had a great, great run in that genre of Christian country music. But what if I would have listened to my family and them saying, that's something other people do. That's something that is instilled and born in someone else's family. But I made a decision. And I had to rethink the way my family had been thinking for generations and generations. Now, don't get me wrong. My family and my ancestors are the hardest working people on this planet. I take nothing from them. But I just had to do what was best for me. So if I have one thing that I would teach new musicians and new people coming up in the entertainment world, don't let anyone, or really any occupation where people tell you you can't do something, if you put your mind to it, my philosophy is somebody's got to do it. It might as well be you. So awesome. Had a great run here in Nashville and switched over from playing drums to tour managing, which I really love. And that was my passion.
And now now you said something that really got my attention too, because if you look at my site, I tell guys that, it's not a diet, it's a decision. And, people always laugh at me when they say which diet works best. And I know there's a parallel here. I'm getting to it, I promise. But it's so many people say, I was asked the other night by individuals said, well, what diet do you like best? I said, all of them. All of them. Not in sure, with the exception of some crazy stuff, but the point of it is it is a decision. And so you, at the age, you're 18 when you left home, is that how old you were?
Actually, I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did some things local there in Ohio before I moved to Arkansas and then to Nashville. So yeah, but looking back on it, I think, oh my goodness, 20 years old, I was moving to an area where I didn't know anybody in Arkansas and met some great friends there along the way. So that was a huge step for a country boy from a little rural area of Ohio. We had 700 people, so it was a big step of faith for sure.
Oh, no doubt. And what's interesting to me and what I pull out of that is you had a huge desire to be more than just what you saw around you. Okay.
Right.
You knew that there was more inside of you, and you knew that you had contribution to make. Because I've been around you, and you're a giver. I mean, you're just that guy. You're that guy that is always positive, always moving, and you would have been stifled in that environment. So the fact that you jumped without a net really is what you did. You really
Yes.
jumped and followed your heart is so incredible. So walk us now. Okay, so now you've been in a very very successful band. How did you go from where you were at that point, to, because I believe that your first artist that you worked as a tour manager for was a pretty incredible artist, pretty well known.
Yeah, Tammy Wynette, the
Hmm.
first lady of country music. And the
Yeah.
reason she has that title is because she was the first artist to sell 1 million records.
Wow.
And I had no experience in tour managing, and I had decided that, look, I want to remain in the music industry. Had no training at the time. There wasn't any courses on how to be a tour manager. You know what's
Hmm.
crazy at Belmont, Middle Tennessee, and other schools, they have that now. You know, you want to be a
Okay.
production manager, you want to be in tour management, music entertainment,
Hmm.
music business. They've got all that.
Hmm.
We had to learn just fly by the seat of our pants. That was just what you had to do back then.
Hmm.
So I took a step backwards from being a drummer in a band that was successful. And to get the training, I hooked up with a band that was at the time called Lariat, and that was before they had their record deal. And after they got their record deal, they were called Ricochet, and they had some singles that were on the charts as well. But when I was with them, nobody knew. We would do the same venue for like 3 days straight.
Hmm.
So I paid my dues. I was out for 9 months and was home 3 days. But I knew that was comparable to me getting an education in another field. It was on the job training for 9 months.
Hmm.
And then one day, a drummer friend of mine who had switched over to tour managing, his name's Marty. He was with Tammy Wynette, and he said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to go tour manage my wife, who's going to have a nice singing career. You would be perfect for this job." And I went and interviewed with George, Tammy's husband. I was scared to death. I was green as a grasshopper, as they say. I had no business being in that room, but sometimes things work out the way they're supposed to work out. And I beat out 7 other experienced tour managers. And it was insane that I had been looking for a tour managing job for 6 months with nothing, no calls, nothing. And I basically had decided one morning, this is the day. You are going to get this no matter what. I didn't think very much about it, but I actually had that day 2 interviews, one with Tammy and Tammy's husband, and then one with Ricky Skaggs' office. And so I felt good about the morning interview with Tammy's husband. And they said, "We'll call you if you're the one." And then I went and a couple hours later and did the interview with Ricky Skaggs' people. And they called me that night, or George called me that night and said, "Hey, you got the job, come back in, let's talk the details." I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was just Tammy Wynette. It was crazy. And then the next day, Ricky Skaggs' people called and said, "Hey, you've been hired for the job." So
That's pretty
I
cool.
called them and said, "Well, let me think this out a little bit." And I called George and said, "I just got hired by Ricky Skaggs' people." And he said, "Call them and tell them you changed your mind." I wasn't used to people talking to me like that. So I called them and said, "I changed my mind." I thought, what am I doing here? So I had a decision to make. And I called my parents and asked them. And my mom said, "Oh my God, you got to go with Ricky Skaggs. He's got good Christian band members and it's the right place to be. You know some of them." And my dad saying, "Look, Tammy Wynette is one of the sexiest grandmas I've ever laid eyes on. You need to go with Tammy Wynette so I can meet her." Thanks, Mom and Dad. But I did take the job with Tammy, and I think, Alan, my final reason for taking that job was 3 weeks later, she was going to Europe, and I was a country boy from a little town of 700 or 800 people called Gratis, Ohio. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would go to Europe. And I got my taste of worldwide traveling through Tammy Wynette. It was really, really a great experience.
That's wild. So you decide to leave home at 20 and become a drummer in a band that goes on and has, a really a great run. Then you completely changed. I mean, going to tour manager, that's I don't know a lot about the music business, but that's a totally different thing. That's a huge obstacle to overcome. And you're not interviewing with somebody who just started. You're interviewing with the probably arguably the number one female in country music at the time, if not ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, she was past her pinnacle, but still had a huge following all over the world. I mean,
Sure.
Australia and the UK, and hit after hit after hit, and having Elton John do a duet with her, "Stand by Your Man." So she was still in on the top of her game, even though she was a little bit of a senior female artist at the time. But for me, the way I looked at it is, if I don't ever get this chance again, I can say that I toured with a very famous artist, and that led me. I introduced Tammy Wynette and Trisha Yearwood to each other. We did a show together, and I introduced them. Okay. And little did I know that the tour manager that Trisha Yearwood had, he said, "I'm a one bus, one truck tour manager, and once she gets past that, if she does, then I'm out of here." So I'm sitting here talking to him about her job, thinking, well, wait a minute. If you walk away from this, please let me know. Well, a couple of weeks later, he did, and she called me about Christmas time. And my mom said, I went home for Christmas, and she got my mom's number somehow. And my mom said, "Hey, there's somebody named Trisha Yearwood that just called you." I said, "I don't know a Trisha Yearwood." She said, "Well, she'll call you back." And I thought it was a friend of mine that was pulling a prank on me.
Oh my gosh.
And so she called back and said, "Hey, Donnie, this is, I met you. You introduced me to Tammy Wynette. We did a festival together." And I said, "Yeah, right. And my name's Humpty Dumpty," or something like that, and hung up the phone.
Oh, did you really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask this question. I don't mean to interrupt. I've got, how many tour buses did Tammy have? You said the other two. Okay, so Trish was up to how many tour buses? I don't have any concept of what that means.
Yeah, with Tammy's, it was basically her and the band, or I'm sorry, her and the backup singers, and then the other bus was the band and the crew. So my first real tour managing gig was 2 buses, and then Trisha was 3 buses.
Oh wow!
And I believe it was 2 or 3 trucks when I switched over. But she had a big hit at the time. I mean, it was Trisha was a unique artist, a female artist in her own rights, because her first single that she put out was "She's in Love with a Boy," and it went number 1. Wow. That hadn't happened to my knowledge before. So her first single went to number 1, and it just catapulted her from a no-name artist almost overnight to, wow, that's the new it girl in the music industry.
So two tour managing gigs at that point, 2 superstars, right?
Yes, I felt like, man, I am living right.
Well, so, and you're the guy that nothing happens unless you're there too. So they know that. So that's pretty cool thing that you got to be part of that. Let me ask you this question, because and I want to move on from here as well. But obstacles. I mean, everybody has obstacles, and this is what I tell the men that I work with. With weight, and people say, "What's this got to do with weight?" Well, it's everything, because obstacles are obstacles, and overcome them. What anything come to mind that you could share that any of the artists that you've worked with, obstacles they've had to overcome, that were beyond just the natural, getting out and becoming a superstar, but anything else that you could share?
Well, Tammy Wynette, I mean, when I went there, she was having a lot of medical issues. She got addicted to painkillers, pain medicine. And that was a rough ordeal. And I went through that with her. And it was that way probably before I got there. And she went through the Betty Ford Center. And, she struggled with that, but she still was able to overcome things. And I just marvel at how she was able to tackle some of the things that she did. And Peter Frampton has a book coming out October 20th, which I can't wait to get. And he's never written a book before, so he's spilling the beans on his life, and he's told me a little bit about it. And I saw him at the tail end of his alcohol addiction. And it's amazing that he is not even tempted by that anymore. I just, I've never been addicted to anything like that before, but I've seen how tough it is on some artists and band members and whatnot. But you can be sitting drinking wine. Some of the band members might have wine and he's not tempted. So I marvel at Peter Frampton, how he's overcome his things. And you're right. It's not weight all the time. It's everybody has their things, that they have to fight and overcome. And mine was a very low income family. And I decided that that's not going to be me for the rest of my life. So I think it's just a lot of mental. I think it's a lot of overcoming by just mentally saying, this is it, no more. And so I've been blessed to be able to think that way.
Defiantly committed is what I'd like to use that term. A coach of mine talks about defiant commitment. So
yeah,
so
it's good.
Okay, so Trish Yearwood. So you're with her for how many years?
Well, I was with her for 11 years.
Okay.
And then I did multiple acts. I mean, there was one year that I did 5. I was hardly home. I did some planning and advancing for Ben Folds 5, did some dates with Michael McDonald, Peter Frampton, Trisha Yearwood, and Steve Warner. 5 acts that I was doing work for in 1 year. So I wasn't home very much. I'll never do that again, by the way.
So you, at that point was what was the next step?
Well, Trisha had decided to take some time off, and she got married to Garth Brooks. So they took some downtime. And again, for me, being at the right place at the right time, Peter Frampton's management team was also Trisha Yearwood's management team. And I was supposed to go out for a 3-weekend fill-in job with Peter Frampton. And the management company didn't tell him that, hey, once you're done with that 3 weeks, you're going to have to start looking for another tour manager. He had been through like 7 tour managers in 5 years and just couldn't find, it wasn't a good mesh. They couldn't find somebody that was the right person. So I had interviewed with Keith Urban, was getting ready to do some other things and trying to figure out my next step. And Frampton told me at the end of that 3 weeks, he said, well, we'll see you on the next trip. This has been fantastic. Thanks very much. And I said, no, I've got to say my goodbyes because that was my last show with you. And he threw a fit. He called the management company and said, I finally found somebody that I gelled with, and now you guys are going to let him go. So basically, long story short, he said, if you go with Keith or whoever you're going with, they're going to do 200 dates a year, and I'm going to do 50 next year. If I compete with them economically, would you consider? And I said, you know what? As a 20-year-old Alan, I would have said, I'm going with the biggest act, the biggest name. I don't care where they go to. But Mama, she didn't raise a fool, really. So I basically took the gig with Frampton, not knowing how long it would last. And it was about 50 shows. And I've been there now for 18 years.
Wow. And yeah, and he still sounds like he did when I was a teenager. So, and he still looks young too. So it's traveling with him and that's where I've seen you in action, and it's evident that they depend on you and what you do. And so what I think is pretty incredible that I don't want people who are watching this to miss is that you had success because you jumped in and figured it out as you went, right? Correct. Yeah. You didn't sit on the sideline waiting. I think the verse, and I'm not going to preach, because if I preach, I'll take an offering. You don't want me to do that. But the verse in the Bible that talks about waiting on God, we forget it's like a waiter. the actual translation is like a waiter, to be in movement, and you were constant movement, and you said it was right place at the right time. I don't think there's any accident there. I think it's the fact that you were in movement, and you made the decision and moved forward, constantly moving forward. So that's incredible.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else too. I have a good friend of mine. I won't mention their name, but musically and voice wise has one of the best voices that you could possibly have. And he doesn't have that get up and let's get it done. And when that happens, you're sitting on the sideline, and I'm thinking, man, if I had that voice that you have, Lord knows what I'd be doing, because it probably wouldn't be tour managing, because he's so talented. But you can be as talented as just Michael Jordan is in basketball. But if you don't get off the sidelines, like you just said, you'll be staying there for a long, long time. And I've seen friends of mine do that. And when it just didn't fall in their lap, then they would hightail it back to their local area and play local drums or guitar or whatever the case might be. This town is so full of talented. You have to just fight and scratch for everything that you get. So,
well, I think we end up in I tie a lot of this back to dieting and weight loss and all, because we live in a world that looks for perfection. Perfection is the lowest common denominator. Perfection. A coach of mine says this. When he said it, I was like, man, that's such gold. Perfection is unattainable. So when we're waiting on perfection, that's our way of procrastinating and not take action. So it's absolutely, and it's just like, the men that I talk to, and I talk to dozens and dozens of men every month that are morbidly obese and want to change, and they're looking for an answer, and they're looking for, a lot of times they're looking for a perfect diet, and they're looking for this thing and they want something to stick to the rest of their life. And I say, and what I'm trying to do is like what you did, and this is the reason I love your story, is because you got in the game. You got in the game and you started taking action, and then you figured it out. And here you are, how many ever decades later, with this, list of accomplishments, and still going too. So, and I want to get to some of what's new coming up for you in a minute, but that's the movement begets success. And so I think that's really a message that you spell loud and clear.
Well, I like what you just said there, and I have had it on my computer for a long time. Procrastination is the assassination of motivation.
Oh yeah,
and
I like
so
that.
I like that little quote. I don't know who said that, but I need to look that up. But I use it quite a bit, especially with crew people and tour managers that are coming up. They're just thinking that it's going to fall in their lap, but you have to be motivated no matter what you're doing, whether it's weight, whether it's any kind of addiction, or just laziness sometimes.
Just figuring out a way to win, and being defiantly committed. So no, that's awesome. And you've been with Frampton for 18 years now, and had an incredible run, and still going. But tell everybody, I know you surprised me with some things you've got coming up, and so let everybody who's listening, you've been so generous with your time, but I want everybody to know how to get in touch with you, about the upcoming, I'll let you tell what it is coming up that you've got coming out, and anything else that you want to share with the audiences that's listening in.
Well, I want to thank you for having me, Alan. It's been fun.
It is fun.
Yes, always good to hook up with you again. We don't get to see each other as much as we'd want to. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can certainly email me. I'm probably the last person on the planet that has an AOL address. I can't get rid of it. People keep sending me stuff to it. So it's you might be able to relate, but it's a real easy email address to remember. It's the word tour, TOUR, and the abbreviation for manager, MGR, and God's perfect number 7. So TOUR MGR 7 at AOL.com. And I think that you're referring to a book that a couple authors have co-written, and one of them is someone that you have got to know a little bit, Les Brown, and they do an anthology maybe every couple of years, And this one that they invited me to be in is called The Power of Mental Wealth. And I didn't know anything about personal development or whatever. I one day walked into Maya Angelou's house. She fixed us a pork chop dinner with Trisha Yearwood. We were on the Garth Brooks tour, and she read a chapter of that book, and my life was changed forever. And I speak of that in the chapter that I wrote for this book, which I can't wait for it to come out around Thanksgiving time. And it's, I think, 16, maybe 18 authors telling their stories of how they overcome. And mine is entitled, we haven't settled in on an official title, but it's basically, it's going to be titled something like Going from Underdog to Overdog, because I'm one that should have not become an overdog. And that is a real word, by the way. Didn't want to stay an underdog all my life, but that book's come out around Thanksgiving. And I'm a huge Les Brown fan. So to even be mentioned in the same sentence with Les Brown is just like a life changer for me. So I'm thrilled about that.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, Les Brown, I had a chance to meet years ago before I really knew anything about personal development, and sat with them at a meeting side by side. And honestly, yeah, he probably wouldn't know who I was, but he's a hero of mine now. I've become such a huge fan of his and everything he's overcome with his story. So I listen to a lot of Les Brown. And when you told me that, it's so funny. You know, I reached out to you. You came to my mind about obstacles, and we don't get to talk that much. We've known each other for over a decade, but occasionally we'll connect. And you asked me if I knew who Les Brown was. I said, gosh, I was listening to some of his just the other day. So big fan of that. And you wrote a chapter in the book, and that book is coming out in October, you said correctly?
Yeah, it's actually Peter's book is coming out October 20th, and the release date for the book that I'm going to write, that I wrote a chapter for, that's going to be sometime between the 1st of November and Thanksgiving. That's what they call the drop date. So it'll be coming out. Yeah.
Well, I want mine signed, so I'll have to get one and I'll set up to get it signed. So that's awesome. Well, Donnie, thank you so much for being here. And guys, if this is anything to you, share this Facebook Live with your friends. And if you guys have heard this, if you're struggling with your weight, if you're struggling with obesity, my mission is to help overweight men overcome the weight that holds them back from living the future they're destined to live, because I believe there's 40 million men in America that are obese, and a lot of purpose is being hidden underneath that weight. So you can watch my masterclass at rethinkdieting.com. And you can schedule a call with me at transformmyfuture.com/apply. And Donnie, again, thank you. We appreciate it, and look forward when all this COVID stuff stops. Maybe we can see you at a concert soon.
Yes, absolutely. And Alan, once again, thank you. And it's really a great pleasure to see you in action with what you're doing with these gentlemen. And I believe in my heart that along the way of doing what you are supposed to be doing, that you're not only changing lives, but you're possibly saving lives. And I just wish you the best. And let's not be strangers. Once the virus is calmed down, let's grab a lunch sometime, either in Nashville or Jacksonville. Thank you.
Sounds great, Donnie. God bless. Take care.
Thank you.